Hello everyone, my name is Stephen Redman. Welcome to Pastor's Library. This is the channel where we discuss everything to do with theology books. Books that might be on a reading list for a seminary course, or maybe books that you might be using to study for a bachelor's or master's degree, or simply to further your own knowledge in church and perhaps to lead Bible groups, study groups, home groups. If you like what we have to say, please remember to leave us a thumbs up and also subscribe and click on the bell. That will let you know when we release another episode. So today I want to talk about my favoured commentaries on the book of Deuteronomy. Deuteronomy, one of the book of the 5 books of the Torah, is a very profound book, very profound to the Jew, and also very profound to the Christian. So today we're going to have a look what I've got on my bookshelves and talk about those. Now, as you know, one of the things that's key to me is having books that are suitable to be quoted in essays for publication, essays for degree work. And that really means in general that these books should be 30 years old or less. You can have exceptions in particular cases, but in general you will get marked down for using a preponderance of books over the age of 30. So I've got a few here for Deuteronomy that are over 30, and so I'm going to start with those, and then we'll move on to the ones that are much like my normal range of books. Now, this is part of the New International Commentary on the Old Testament, and this is by Peter C. Craigie. This book was published in 1976, which means it's 49 years old at the time of filming. It's got 424 pages, and as you would expect from the NICOT, the New International Commentary on the Old Testament, this book is actually very profound. And I had this for quite a long while, and it was my main reference for Deuteronomy, and I still consult it, even though I have now got some books that I would have to say I think are better. But this book I became comfortable with. You know what I mean? Like an old pair of slippers. So Peter Craigie produced this. This is still worthwhile consulting if you're a pastor, if you're not writing essays. There is still a lot to be offered here. Now, today, as I go through these, I'm going to be looking at chapter 11, the last few verses, 26, 27, 28, really. And these are where it talks about blessings and curses that will come upon them for either accepting and following the covenant or rejecting it and worshipping other gods. So this is what I picked up from the page here from Craigie, which I thought was worth a mention. The commandments reflected a way of life, the good way of life which God determined for his people. Therefore, to disobey or not listen to the commandments was to turn aside from the way that alone could lead to happiness and prosperity in relationship with God, and to take a false trail that could lead only to separation from God, disaster. Thus, in the exposition of the details of the law that follows, Moses' role was not that of a great legalist or a jurist, but was that of a man deeply concerned that the people who were under his charge should enter into the fullness of life that was potential in the covenant relationship of God. If you see one of these going cheap, it's still worth having on your bookshelf, but please don't be quoting this in essays. But Peter Craigie left us something worth having when he left us that book. Now, interpretation is a series which I think I've got them all, but this is, I think, more for pastors and for Bible group leaders than it is for academics or for academic quoting. This was written by Patrick D. Miller, who has a little bit of experience in writing about Deuteronomy, but it was written in 1990, so it's 35 years old. But at 253 pages, it actually has quite a lot to offer. And of course, on a book this age, the bibliography is almost worthless, really. But there is something that you might pick out from using a bibliography of that age. So, talking about this same excerpt, it says this: "Again, Israel, whenever it hears this word, is placed on the boundary between land and landlessness, life and death. A people of later generations enjoying all the benefits of life on the land are carried back to that moment when all or nothing lay before them. As that happens, they are reminded of the way of obedience and the way of disobedience. In the manner of their life before God in the sphere of divine blessing, God's people will shape their future as they decide between obedience and disobedience." I actually thought Miller's language there was very good. I felt the way he summarised that was more than helpful. So again, an old book. I wouldn't perhaps put the value on this that I put on Craigie's, but it's still got something to offer. And hopefully they won't be too long before they're replacing that with something more up to date. Now, this one is 34 years old. It's a 1991 publication, and it's Deuteronomy 1 to 11 on the Yale Bible series, and it's written by Moshe Weinfeld. Now, this, if I understand this right, there never was the rest of this. There was going to be another volume, but I'm presuming Weinfeld died, but it certainly was never published. Now, the Anchor Yale Bible series can be a bit hit and miss. Some of them are a lot better than others. They're always academic. Some of them veer on the sort of semi-technical, and they really can offer a lot if you are going to sift through them. At 458 pages, there's quite a lot here when we're talking just about 11 chapters. And I would say I like this, and I feel there is something to be had out of it, even though it's 34 years old. Weinfeld says this: "Nevertheless, the blessings and the curses, as presented by the Deuteronomic author here, have to be understood in their theological sense. At the entry into the land Israel was given, the choice between the blessing, which is life and good, and the curse, which is evil and death. As Deuteronomy 30:19 puts it, you choose life, which means the observance of God's commandments." Still got something to offer. Amazingly, these still fetch quite a lot of money, even though they're largely paperback these days, but not to be dismissed instantly on its age. This one is 31 years old, and it's 1994, 477 pages, and it's written by Eugene H. Merrill, and it's the New American Commentary on Deuteronomy. Of course, the New American Commentaries are being replaced by the Christian Standard Commentaries, and there is one we're promised by Gary J. Miller in the CSC series. So if I were you, I wouldn't hunt for this. If this was something you saw in a second-hand bookshop, £5, $5, something like that, this still has some merit. But the New Christian Standard Commentary by Miller, now that is one to look forward to. So I would just say keep your eyes peeled for that. But this series has always been good, from the very black font on the brilliant white paper to the good hardback. Everything is going for this. And these are an academic commentary, very, very good for pastors, for students. I would recommend them thoroughly. But like we say, this one is now on that borderline 31 years. So what Merrill has to say is Moses, in briefest form, set forth the premise that blessing is the outflow of obedience. As they obeyed, the commands, they would anticipate the blessing in the myriad forms that implies. What it means to obey is, in essence, to remain true to the Lord as a loyal covenant vassal. This is clear from the reverse of this, the disobedience that brings the curse. For what disobedience is spelled out as turning away from the way of the Lord and following other gods. I actually really did like this, but I live in anticipation of the new Gary Miller volume in the CSC, and I would say that is one definitely worth keeping an eye open for amongst new releases. I think that's all the sort of ones that are doddering on old age. And I know that some of you will say, well, I've got one that's 250 years old. Well, yes, but seriously, when we're talking about academic work, we do need to think of age of the product. So at the moment, there's no Zondervan exegetical commentary, which is one I would always like to talk about. But this is volume 1 of the New Interpreter's Bible Commentary. It's got Genesis through Deuteronomy and an introduction to the Pentateuch, which is very good. Ronald E. Clements wrote a 213-page commentary on Deuteronomy for this, which was published in 2015. So this is something bang up to date. It's relatively compact for a book like Deuteronomy with 213 pages. But, you know, there's something about the New Interpreter's commentaries that they all seem to be written by people who know how to write, who know how to communicate. And I think that Clements has done a good job of this. So what I would say here is that it is a book which is all going to cost you quite a lot of money. Typically in the UK, we're paying about £70 for one of these volumes. But remember, this has got 5 good commentaries on the first 5 books of the Bible, and you must bear that in mind in the price. So, Clements has this to say: behind concepts of blessing and curse, there lay a deep consciousness throughout the entire ancient Near East of the power of the spoken word. Words uttered in the name of a deity, whether threatening or reassuring, were words fraught with power. It is the consciousness of this fact that makes inclusion of the misuse of the name of the Lord an important prohibition among the commandments. To link the powerful name of God with words spoken in deliberately contrived malice, or in order to secure undeserved protection, was to abuse the divine name. I think this is a really good starting commentary, and I always look at it. It's a good one. Okay, the next one on my bookshelf is Deuteronomy by Telford Work. This is the SCM Theological Commentary on the Bible. It's a hardback book, published in 2009, 332 pages. I don't honestly recall ever reading anything by Telford Work, but he gets a great write-up on the back cover by Tremper Longman III, and you can hardly disagree with Tremper Longman, can you? I have to say this book is one I've never fallen in love with. The books in my library are personal friends. We've all got a relationship. Some of them I have got mad reading. I've become angry as I've read them. Others I've become disappointed and ended up praying for the author. But most of these books are good friends. And this one is just one that's never quite clicked with me. I can't really put it into words. It's just that this is not a commentary I've ever fallen in love with. But it does have something on offer. And I would suggest that 332 pages, 2009, does make it have a bit more value. And I think that the bibliography is short, but it's not bad. So, what does he have to say about the verses we're looking at? He says, Abraham travelled to the oaks of Moreh. Incidentally, when I read that, I thought, have I opened the right book? But anyway, where Yahweh promised the land to his seed, and he subsequently built an altar there. Blessing and curse is the legacy of this whole saga. Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make of you a great nation. I will bless you, make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and the ones who curse you I will curse, and in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed. Combining that scene with the present one sets the Torah's commandments in that ultimately ecclesial framework as a means by which Israel will become a blessing and a curse to itself and then to all others. So that's the SCM Theological Commentary by Telford work. This is the Abingdon Old Testament commentary. It's by Walter Brueggemann, a well-known name. This was published in 2001, 306 pages. And compared to the previous one, I quite like this one, and I've been reasonably well attached to it. I suppose I would say that I don't think this is Brueggemann's best commentary, but he does offer quite a lot. And whereas on the section that we're talking about, he keeps saying turn to chapter 28, I have just got a little thing for you here. When I read this, my mind went back to computer studies in my A-level period of time and when I went to university the first time. And it says this, the if-then of verses 13 to 17, because when you're doing computer programming, there's lots of if-then statements. Sorry, that's ridiculous that I should even raise it, but there you have it. The if-then of verses 13 to 17 is reiterated in positive form in verses 22 to 25 without a negative counterpart. The if of obedience is given in the verbs love, walk, cleave, all to support the main verb, surely keep, with an infinitive absolute. The positive then is expansive. The then is offered in the language of conquest. Israel will successfully displace the older population of the land, will completely intimidate its enemies, and will claim the land to the broadest imaginable borders. I get slightly excited when I'm reading that because I think the author maybe was. But I think that's a worthwhile one to include. And I would say for the whole book, this is a very, very good commentary. The next couple are probably not that popular, but I think they're fabulous. This is a 2015 commentary, 260 pages. The subtitle is a literary and theological commentary, but it's called Reading Deuteronomy, and it's written by Stephen L. Cook. Now, this series, which is the Reading the Old Testament series, there's a Reading the New Testament series as well, these focus not just on word-for-word commentary, which there is, but on the theology of the book. And you get the theology in a section near the front, and then it keeps coming through in the text. And I think this is really good. I actually like the whole series, but this one I think is a glowing one. Here's a couple of quotes for you. Immanence and intimacy characterize God's presence according to Deuteronomy. That is Deuteronomy properly understood and not taken as a demythologizing work. This characterization, however, tells only half the story. God offers loving intimacy, to be sure, but the divine presence should not be regarded as something familiar and safe. Rather, it is potentially lethal. You just got to read that to yourself a few times. That is really special. Going to the specific portion in chapter 11 that we've been looking at, ancient Near Eastern vassal treaties typically concluded with a section of blessings and curses that flowed from obedience and disobedience respectively. Covenantal blessings lavished benefits on obedient vassals, but those who concluded a covenant on oath also assumed liability for sanctions if they violated their treaties. I love this guy's handling of language, I really do. And he goes on to say this, during their ceremony, the words of blessing and curse will echo down from the heights into the valley below as if into a great amphitheatre. I think this is a fabulous book. And being 2015, it's 10 years old, very, very quotable, will be very quotable for a long time. And his works cited list doesn't call it a bibliography, calls it words cited. This, I would suggest to you, is very good, and it will show you a lot more about the man and what he's dug it into. So that's Stephen Cook. Now, I drag it out every time, the New Beacon Bible Commentary. I love this series. This is compact, paperback, very, very accessible. A lot of work's gone into the layout of these. They really are designed for me. They're very accessible, and I really love it. This is by Stephen G. Green, and he hasn't got a lot of works out there, but this is a fantastic testimony to his ability as an academic writer. So this is Deuteronomy, a commentary in the Wesleyan tradition, published in 2016, 302 pages. And this is what he says. The theological tension of binding blessings with obedience pervades the entire Deuteronomistic tradition. The mysterious tension between divine action and human engagement is played out in the if-then phrases of these verses. And then he says this over the page. In this verse, the gift is the possibility of both blessing and curse. What an interesting gift. This could imply that the true gift of God to the people is their freedom to make a choice in the moment. In verse 31, Yahweh is giving the land to his people. In this verse, the gift given is the land itself. And it goes on. I can only say these are commentaries you want to read cover to cover. They're not just a dipping in and out commentary like most of the ones that I've mentioned to you. But what a brilliant piece of work. Now, we're getting now onto the slightly most serious ones. The Word Biblical Commentary comes in 2 volumes, written by Dwayne L. Christensen. And when I was preparing this, I realised that I don't actually have it all, because I've got series 1 of the first volume, which only covers to chapter 11, which makes me glad that I picked a verse in chapter 11 to comment on. This one was published in 1991, 223 pages, but the second edition was published in 2014, 576 pages, and it covers chapter 1 to chapter 21, verse 9. And then the second edition covers chapter 21, verse 10 to chapter 34, verse 12. Now, I've clearly got that one. This, I don't even know how that's happened. But the truth is, I have now ordered the second edition, and I'm looking forward to receiving that. But fortunately, this one's got chapter 11 in it. So we'll just have a quick look, shall we, at what he has to say. Once again, it becomes clear how the commandments are much more than a mere body of legislation, but rather a way of life. One disobeys God's commandments by turning aside from the way, that is, by going after other gods. In the detailed exposition of the law which follows, Moses is not so much a jurist as he is a spokesman for God, one who knows in his heart that what God requires of his people, if they are to know the fullness of life he desires for them. I think Christensen has done a good job on this. This one obviously is a bit aged now, but the second volume, which I had just simply not noticed that I didn't have chapters 12 to 19, but that has really kept up the standards, and I think this will not be on the rush job list for Zondervan to replace because it's still good, and I think it has a lot to offer. Of course, word biblical commentaries are really quite a bit technical, and sometimes people struggle with them, but these are a dip in and dip out commentary, and I like them. I really do. Now, I'm coming to my last 4. This one is a 1996 commentary, which means we've got a year in it, people. A year in it, to quote. This is the JPS Torah commentary, and This has got 548 pages, and it's written by Jeffrey H. Tigay. Now, what can I say about this? Other than this is quite remarkable. So this is in that series where the first page is the last page. It's sort of written back to front or printed back to front. I actually got a reputable standard English commentary once, which was printed back to front. And I sent it back. And when I sent it back, I realised what it was. After I'd sent it back, I wished I'd kept it because it was really a rarity. But this is written by a Jew for a Jewish audience primarily. But I have to say, this is full of little bits of help that you would only get from a Jewish author. And I think this is actually quite special. I've only got a small quotation for you from this one, but these JPS commentaries, some of them are less helpful than others, but I think the Deuteronomy one is good. He says this, verse 26, I set before you blessing and curse. That is, I give you the choice between material well-being and misfortune. The two possibilities are graphically illustrated in Deuteronomy 28. Other gods whom you have not experienced, that is, gods who you have not proved and have not proved themselves to you. The Lord's claim on Israel's loyalty is based on the fact that he alone has acted on Israel's behalf. From other gods, Israel has experienced nothing. Compare Hosea 13 verse 4, only I, the Lord, have been your God ever since the land of Egypt. You have never experienced a God but me. You have never had a helper but me. I think these are dear to get hold of. Well, particularly in England. I think you might find a few more of them in the USA. But I wouldn't say to you, you have to have this on your bookshelf. But if you do get the chance to have one, it's worthwhile. Now, I'm going to give you now my top three. And the NIVAC commentaries, the New International Version Application Commentary, are often in the top half of mine, but maybe not necessarily as high up in the list. This is by Daniel I. Block, and I think he has done a remarkable job with this. The NIVACs, remember, have got the same sort of commentary as anybody else in one sense, but they always end with an application for every section, a modern application that we can apply to our lives. So this was published in 2012. It's got 879 pages, and this is comfortable. I love this book. It's really excellent book. It's got great clarity of font on the page. The pages are brilliant white. I suppose you would say that they're bleached white, but this is what you want when you're in your quiet office, maybe not with the best of lighting conditions. You want to be able to see things on the page, and this is a very good series. But this particular one is an excellent commentary on the book of Deuteronomy. So he says this is precisely the opposite of the perspective advocated by Moses in Deuteronomy. Israel's first allegiance was to be to Yahweh, not to the law. Obedience to the will of God should be an expression of one's prior love for God. Otherwise, it degenerates to moralism and legalism. Those who have been redeemed will consider the relationship with God the supreme privilege and respond with fear and love, demonstrated in acts that please him and serve the well-being of others. Rooted in love for God, from Zion and the Promised Land as a whole, the causes of justice and peace are to flow out into the nations. I absolutely love that paragraph. I think that's great. The NIVAC range, widely loved by pastors, and I honestly support this one. I think it's a brilliant one. We've now got two others. This is a 2002 commentary. It's the Apollos Old Testament commentary on Deuteronomy, and it's by J.G. McConville. 544 pages. What can I say about this? This is a big commentary, a lot of pages, but it sucks you in. You start reading about something you're looking up and you find you've read a section, a chapter. You've actually got into the book quite easily. And I suppose McConville here is very good at making this accessible. It's a big commentary, it's an academic commentary, but this is a commentary that is truly accessible and truly engages with the reader. I think McConville has really produced almost the best of breed with this, and I entirely endorse this. This is the sort of commentary you should really put near the top of your list and be looking for it, because it is an absolutely excellent piece. What he says here is the second distinguishing element in these verses is their thematic focus, also fixed in verse 26. What Yahweh now gives is strikingly the blessing and the curse, not the land. That might be expected following the verb to give. The blessing and the curse are technical terms here from the language of treaty and covenant, and in Yahweh's imposition of them, he is asserting his role as the primary and authoritative participant in the covenantal relationship that is being instituted. McConville is clearly a master of Deuteronomy, and this good, solid hardback is one I thoroughly endorse and recommend to you. Now, we started out with a 49-year-old New International Commentary on the Old Testament by Peter Craigie, and this is a 3-year-old version that replaced it, and this, I would suggest to you, is my top tip for Deuteronomy. This is by Bill T. Arnold, a great commentator, quite a prolific man, has written a lot of really good stuff. And this is 660 pages, and it's only part 1. This one is about to be followed imminently, I'm told, by part 2, and I look forward to getting it. I tell you what, I will not remotely hesitate from buying that, because Arnold has done such a good job. This is a truly academic work. It covers everything. This is one of those commentaries that it doesn't matter what verse you're looking at, you will find a comment on it. They're quite thorough, and Arnold has done an absolutely excellent job. If you're looking at this, 660 pages compared to 424 in Craigie's, and this is only the first 11 chapters. What a superb job. If you're wanting a good bibliography, pointers for further study, this has got it. And I would suggest to you it's an absolutely brilliant place to look. I love having good bibliography, and this certainly is outstanding. I mean, it's pages and pages and pages, and I love a good bibliography, believe me. So, this is what he has to say, chapter 11, verse 26. Take note, exclamation mark. In a rhetorical style occurring elsewhere in Deuteronomy, the paragraph opens with an attention-catching notation. He then gives other examples, which may have a presentation nuance, such as, here it is, or voila, when announcing that Yahweh is placing the promised land before Israel as a gift. In this case, the exclamation demands attention as part of the heightened drama here at the conclusion of the book's parenesis, in which Moses sets the blessing and the curse before all Israel. I love his language. I love the way he brings out truth. I think Arnold has done a fabulous job with this. And as far as the eye can see, this will be my top recommendation for Deuteronomy. And all I can say is, get a second volume when it comes out, because the 2 volumes together will make a huge chunk, or they'll take a huge chunk of space on your bookcase, but you can be sure that you have got pretty much the ultimate that there is out on the book of Deuteronomy. I hope you've liked this. If you have, please leave us a thumbs up on YouTube. Please make sure you've subscribed and clicked on the bell. It does help us with the algorithm, and your support for this channel, I can't tell you how appreciative I am of it. It's really wonderful that we provide a little bit of a niche here for students of theology, students of biblical studies, and we're glad to count you among that number. So until next time, all I've got to say to you is bye!